Hi, in this part of the lesson we're going to talk about curve parts. So we're going to look at the two common curves that we're going to use. We're going to look at the EP and the Bezier. So we'll start with the EP. Here we have it in the top view. So if I want to look at the different parts, just like any other object, I can right-click directly on the curve, and I have my compass. So here's my object mode. Really only going to deal with these two parts of a curve, control vertex and curve points. But I'll just point out this. The edit points are these X's that you see. They're very small. Let me tap the space bar, bring this full screen. Here you go. Essentially, in the EP curve, that's where you click your mouse to create the curve. These represent the divisions between the sections. So here this curve is 1, 2, 3, 4 different sections. To illustrate that better, you can activate what's called the hull, which is essentially those same 4 divisions, same 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but going from what's called the control vertex to control vertex. We don't usually use either of these two curve parts. They're kind of legacy, but they're there. The two parts that I do want to talk to you about, the two components, first one is control vertex. So very simply, the control vertices create the shape of the curve. So if I want to edit the shape of the curve, I would click on and select one or more of the control vertices. Notice that some of them lie not on the curve, but off the curve. So if I click on it and I want to make this curve different, maybe like a nice even curve, I could select this curve point and move it out and tap the space bar again. This is also the way I can make a curve three-dimensional. So if I select, say, this curve and I drag it up, now my curve exists in 3 dimensions, right? It's got a Y component as well. So that's the way in which we would make a curve three-dimensional, because we do want to draw these in a flat view. I'm going to tap the space bar on my top again. There are 3 different looks to these control vertices. They're a little hard to see like this, but you'll notice them. Most of them are solid pink dots. The first point, the first click that you do with your mouse on an EP curve creates the first CV, control vertex, and it is an open box. So that's the way you can identify the beginning of your curve. Your curve goes from the beginning, the first point, to the end, the last point. It has a direction. In this case, it's here left to right. The second point has a U. Looks like a U. And it just shows you the direction that the curve is going. It's really just a visual thing, not telling you that these control vertices operate any different. They all operate the same. Excuse me. The other part that I want to show you about these curves, if I right-click, is the curve point. So the curve point's a little interesting. There's nothing. All it does is turn your curve this light shade of blue. Every inch along, every part along your curve is a potential curve point. To call one out, you just simply click with the left mouse button on the curve and hold, and drag this little red dot to where you want to place a curve point, and then you release the left mouse button. And there's your curve point. If I want to add another curve point to that curve, I'll hold the shift button down and click and drag and release. Now I have 2 curve points. So what are these curve points? What do they do? Well, they're used in editing a curve. For one thing, if I wanted to split this curve into, say, these three parts, so instead of having one curve, I wanted three curves consisting of each of these sections, then I can delineate those breaks by my curve point. So here, if I go to a tool, I can split this curve into 1, 2, and 3 different curves that look all the same. The other thing I can do is I can add control vertices either at the point where the curve point is, or if I have 2, I can do it in between. So I can have any number of additional control vertices, say, between these 2 curve points, or at these 2 curve points, or at any curve point that you have. By the way, if I want to get rid of any of them, I just control click on it like that. Sometimes control click and drag, it's easier, and that leaves me with one. So that's the EP curve. Let's take a look at the Bezier curve here. So the Bezier curve is almost the same. If I right click, I don't have edit points, notice, for my Bezier curve. I do have a hull, which simply connects the Bezier corners, tangent ends, to each other. Don't really use this too much again. Really, we're looking at control vertices, not even so much curve points. Curve points operate the same on Bezier curves. So I can select, I can click and drag on the place a curve point, say split this curve here at this point, or add points here. Those are the 2 main things for curve points. And so it operates, the curve point parts operate just the same as on an EP curve. What's a little bit different are these control vertices. So the control vertices bring up 2 things. Brings up what's called the anchor point, which is the place you clicked, essentially, to make the curve, and then a line with these 2 squares at the end. These are the tangent handles. So the tangent handles, in this case, make up the shape of the curve on either side of the anchor point. So the anchor point's just like a CV, control vertex. I can move it around. If I go to say the perspective view, I can drag it up and make this 3-dimensional. The difference here is if I select one of these tangent handles, I can move this around. I can move it closer to the anchor point. Notice as I do that, the curve gets sharper, farther away. I can also move it up and down to change the shape of my curve. So notice that, too, that if I move one side down, the other side moves up, and if I move the other side up, the other side moves down. There seems to be a relationship between these 2 sides, these 2 tangent handles, and there is. This relationship remains until you break it. So how do you break it? Like this. So I'm going to select either tangent handle, or I can even select the anchor point in the center. I'm going to go up here to curves, Bezier curves, tangent options, and I'm going to break the anchor tangent. Now you'll notice that I can manipulate each curve totally separately. If I want to make them even again, if I want to connect them again, see, I want to make them both this size and direction. So I want to bring this so that it matches this one. So I'll select the one I want to match to. I'll go to curves, Bezier handle, tangent options, and I'll smooth the anchor point. And you'll notice that it makes it in the same direction. If I want it to be the same length, I have to even the anchor tangents, and that makes them both that length. Okay? So even makes them the same length, breaks them apart, makes them totally separate. Over here, if I just move my mouse a little bit, over here, I noticed that this point, I just clicked. These, to make this, I clicked and dragged, right, to make these tangent handles. Here I just clicked. When I just click, I create a corner anchor. So if I want to change it to make it look like one of these, to have a tangent handle, I have really two choices. I can go over here to my curves, Bezier curves, and my anchor presets. And my two choices are corner, which is rather a Bezier, which is what I have here with the handles, like that. I'm going to undo, Control Z. Or if I want to keep this same kind of angle, but I just want the tangent handles, but I want it to look this sharp, then I'll go to curves, Bezier, anchor presets, and I'll do a Bezier corner. And notice those are automatically broken. Just Control Z a couple times there. In other words, this one I can bring up. Notice that these two are not connected. If I did want to connect the Bezier corner, I would simply go to Bezier Tangent Options, and I'd smooth, and went back to there. So that makes them even again. If I want to make, say, this a corner, I just simply do the same thing. I'll select the Bezier anchor, curves, Bezier, and I have two choices again. I can make it a corner, which removes the tangent handles, Control Z to undo, or I can choose here Bezier corner, which keeps a sharp corner, but gives me handles to manipulate. So that's the parts of both a Bezier and an EP curve. So the next part of this, we'll talk about the curve tools that we see up here in the curve menu. So some of these other tools we'll look at that can be useful when we begin to model our objects.